Hello, welcome to Reddit roast number 38. Mal, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
We are doing a short one today because, to be honest, we're really busy. We've got so
Yeah.
many client applications going on at the moment. We haven't got time to do too many roasts. So we're going to do three plus a bonus. One of them is going to be is somebody who's in the top 1% of GMAT scorers in the Focus Edition, which is insane. Somebody with a 2.8 GPA, which is a little bit less insane. We'll see how to handle that. And somebody who's considering risking their Harvard offer to apply to Stanford. We'll talk about whether that's a sensible idea. Okay, Mal, should we dive into the first profile?
Yes, let's go.
All right.
Profile one, GMAT 755. That
Oh,
is insane.
no.
An R2 applicant with 20 days remaining only, undergrad GPA, low to mid 3.3 range, and has a graduate degree as well, 3.2 GPA, CPA certification, has a UK management accounting qualification as well. Work experience, 7+ years. Started my career in 2018 as an internal audit intern in India at a tech company. Converted that to a full-time role earlier than expected. Within 2 years, earned a promotion and traveled to the US to work. Later, moved to a top US investment bank again in India as a front office adjacent finance risk role, transitioned into an FP&A role, relocated to Canada again now for in 2022, joined a bank in a risk governance capacity, which was again converted to full-time ahead of schedule. Now
Mhm.
at another leading Canadian bank in a process controls and financial analytics role, recently promoted to senior manager. All right, post MBA goals. Ultimate goal is to own a P&L with a company. Short term would be to get into financial strategic planning roles and develop my leadership skills. Some dream schools are Wharton, Kellogg Booth, Columbia. Target is Stone and safety Cornell, Yale, Darden, Tuck. I see some questions. Let's go through the a quick review first, Sam, shall we?
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk academics first. 755 is insane. I
Yes.
did a little check before. That is top 1%. In fact, I'm hearing it's top 100th percentile. Like, depending on how you look at, like, it's
Wow.
really,
Okay.
really, really high. The GPA, not so much. Remember, it's the undergrad they care about. They don't care about your postgrad GPA. So I think I take it as a 3.3. I think we said, like, I don't know what
Yeah.
low to mid 3.3 range means. I'm going to take that as a 3.3. So it's like, okay, it's not a train wreck, but it's not ideal. Demographic, I'm going to guess Indian, originally with international exposure in Canada and the US, or in Canada with the US bank, etc. So pretty ORM, pretty yeah ORM. A lot of other people of that demographic applying to MBA programs for sure. Extracurriculars, no mention, I don't think. Now,
Mm.
might just be that OP hasn't bothered to mention them, in which case fine. But it also could be that they haven't been doing any, which is a bit more of a red flag. So I'm not sure on that one, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But potentially a bit of an issue on the extracurriculars for this profile. Professional, I love how he calls it front office adjacent. I think what that means is middle office. So for
Oh,
those who aren't familiar with the sort of the hierarchies of MBA of investment banking, you have the front office is kind of considered client facing, mid office who kind of supports the front office in like risk and trade settlement and that kind of stuff, and back office is like fixing like IT, fixing the computers and that kind of
mm,
stuff. And they're seen very differently by the admissions officers. And I think what OP is trying to say here is mid office, which is
mm,
less sexy. So I think, and that backs up from like what he's saying in the other roles, right? Financial planning and analysis, like this is not client facing work. So solid professional progression, but not a particularly sexy role in MBA world. In terms of goals, yeah, this strategic planning, this short-term goal is really, really nice. Like this makes perfect sense given OP's goals. I'm really glad he's not saying consulting, which I half expected. And the long-term goal makes sense. A little bit vague, but I think that'll be clearer when you make sure OP you go into the detail in your essays, and that'll work. Now, so overall, for a solid profile, that 755 gives him the right to apply to all of these schools for sure. Um, and the role, as I say, role is not too sexy, so there'll be quite a lot of quite a lot of attention being paid to the a clear resume, to really
mm,
powerful essays that convey what the role involves, and using stories ideally. And also the LORs are going to carry quite a lot of weight because the recommenders are going to shine some more light on what that role involves. And if you can frame it as more as a leadership role, if you can frame it as taking on lots of responsibility, maybe you do communicate with clients occasionally as well, like you can frame this role as really impactful. So that's the overall view. Strong profile.
Okay, and let's just focus on OP's timeline a little bit. He has his their question is, given the timeline, I might just be able to focus on 5 schools. So
Hmm.
does it make sense to still try for round two or defer to R1 next year?
Yeah. Look, the profile was posted 4 days ago. So it's a slight, given how tight things are now, that's a slight difference versus today. We're filming today on the 19th of December. In other words, Harvard Wharton kind of deadlines are around the 5th or so of Jan. So we've got about 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my personal thought on this is that it might be a bit tight to do five. You'd have to do an app every 3 days, which is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
My personal kind of what I'm leaning towards is probably aim for three, a safe, a mid, and a reach, and include Wharton as one of them because Wharton's a very short application. If OP does that, I think he could get three solid applications in and probably keep the rest for next year. Um, if timeline was no issue, we would say like 6, 7, maybe even 8 schools is what you should be aiming for in 15 days. I think that's going to be challenging. I think 3, maybe 4 is the right approach, and then save some of them for next year. So specifically, when I say save, like people then are wondering, like, oh, should I apply to all of the best schools now and then let's save the next year till backup? No, probably not. I would split them out. I would have Wharton as one, as I've said. I would have either Harvard or Wharton as your reach. And then I'd
Mm-hmm.
have either Cornell or Yale or Cornell or Stern as your kind of safer school. And then, depending on how that goes, apply next year. And that way you're a first time applicant to the Harvards or Stanfords. It's important to be a first time applicant for these schools as well. So that's how I'm looking at it. I mean, no right or wrong answer here. It depends on how much time OP's got and how progressed he is. But
Yeah.
if a client came to me for today and said, I want to apply to MBA programs, let's do it, let's do this, I'd say, okay, let's aim for three and then see how we go.
Mm. Okay. So if that round two does happen, which
Hmm.
schools seem most realistic for OP in their client in their dream list and the
Hmm.
schools in the safety list with scholarship chances?
Yeah, fair. I think because of timeline, Wharton has to be in there, although it is the highest ranked school on the list. So it's a bit of a bit awkward, but still. I think that the fit in terms of the finance focus, etc., is possibly with Booth and Columbia and Stern and
Mm,
Cornell. Those are the schools that historically have been well known for their finance pedigree. Cornell's the kind of black sheep in this because Cornell have got a very strong pipeline into investment banking, despite being 4 hours from New York. And so, if finance, kind of with a finance focus, I think the fit here is best. Probably Booth, Stern, Cornell. To me, those are the schools that have the best fit. Booth, for those sort of not aware, Chicago is a real strong finance hub. It's a and partly because historically it's positioned time zone wise halfway between New York and the West Coast. So there's a massive trading establishment there. And so I think that would be the one that balances best between professional kind of story and the level that OP is going for. Yeah, okay. I'm sure he'd love to get into Columbia, but Booth has a far higher acceptance rate than Columbia. In fact, up until very recently, I think Booth had a higher acceptance rate than Stern even. So actually, Booth is the strategic choice here. But it's
mm,
got 2 long essays. So again, it depends on timing.
mm-hmm. And what do you think OP can do to strengthen their chances within this timeline?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very tight, isn't it? I think the big one, I mean, I mentioned that the extracurriculars are blank at the moment. Now, But 15 days, there's not much they're going to be able to do to fix that. But they might be able to at least sign up for a few things and give themselves something to talk about in an interview. That would be the big one. The other one is just like narrative. Like at this point, it's crunching the essays, being all over your LORs, right? We haven't even mentioned the recommenders. You're going to ask for a hey, recommender, hey, boss, I'm going to leave the company. I'd like a letter of recommendation. And by the way, I need it in 2 weeks. Oh, and
Mm-hmm.
it's Christmas. Like recommenders
Mm-hmm.
going to be tight. So I think at narrative, recommenders, and if possible, extracurriculars.
Right. And just to touch back on OP's previous question, uh, they've also asked about schools in the safety list with high scholarship chances.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance with those safeties?
Possibly with a 755, there's a merit scholarship on the line. Yeah, I think so. The historically of those schools that have given the most scholarship, it's been NYU Stern. Every
Mhm.
year for the last like 5 years, we've had a client get a full ride offer from NYU, male, female, ORM, URM, you name it. We've had clients. Now, the one that jumps to mind was an fairly recently last year was an Indian male, Indian heritage US based male who got, I want to say, like, he got a full ride from NYU that he ended up taking. Now, that is a dream scenario for this applicant, right? Proximity to Wall Street, really, really good fit in terms of
Mhm.
his from professional side. Now, OP's not doing any extracurriculars, working in a middle office role in a bank, doesn't ooze EQ, which is the big
Mm.
thing that NYU are looking for. But I think with their GMAT, I think they probably look past that and probably make him an offer. And could he get a full ride? Maybe
Mm.
tough because I don't think OP looks poor, to be clear. Like he's getting well paid. It might be difficult, but I think a scholarship at NYU Stern is probably the most likely from that list.
Mm. Okay. All right. I think that's all for OP's questions.
Cool.
Shall we move on to profile two?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, one last profile review.
It makes you wonder how many he's done, doesn't it?
Yeah. But
Go
also,
on.
I think they're in the process of sending out all the apps for round two and want to get some realistic feedback just in time.
Difficult
27 male,
one because it's
difficult
late, isn't
one.
it?
Yeah, and
And
he's in
so,
the middle
what
of
are we going to
things.
give feedback that like throws everything in the bin and makes him start again, or what? We'll see. Let's go.
Mm. Hope not. So this is a 27-year-old male Latino with 5 years of
Hmm.
experience in private wealth management. Most recently, working with corporate advising for some of my firm's biggest clients, which was a huge promotion. Stats, 665 GMAT, given this GMAT 6 times.
Whoa.
Super to bump up the quant, but it doesn't really budge. So OP is going to stick with that score. GPA is a bit low. It's 2.81 from a state school. Worked
Bit
several
low.
jobs. Bit low. Just a tad. Worked several jobs in college, was an active part of the community. Just never went to class. Explained in my optional essays. So OP has that locked. Hold the series 6, 7, 6, 6, 9, and 10, as well as my CFP and insurance license. Goal is to pivot into management consulting. Wants to work with the critical thinking aspect of his job on a larger scale.
Mhm.
Accolades, I'm currently an alumni mentor for the financial planning program from my undergrad. It's only an hour, but I was told everything helps. I also received my company's most prestigious award for work I did in my prior role to drive growth in untapped client segments. Applying to schools, reality schools are UCLA, USC, McCombs, and maybe Cornell Johnson. Stretches, Fuqua, Ross, Darden, and far reaches, OP is applying to Yale, Haas, Stuck, and Columbia.
Mm.
Has already tailored his essays and has easily put 50 plus hours into crafting the story. At this point, OP looks like he's just curious about whether this is all realistic. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. Look, OP's already put 50 hours in, so I'm well, it's just I'm not going to take that into account. I'm just going to give my
Mm,
honest opinion. Okay, academic. Look, 2.81 is a horror show, right? That is that is really not ideal. We look at the ranges of the top schools. 2.81 is not in the top 80 in the 80th percentile range. It's really not nice. And that factor, why is that an issue? Because schools have to declare this in the rankings, and the average GPA is one of the key factors in the rankings. So by taking OP in, they are not helping their ranking. Most people, the flip side of that, because the GMAT also goes into the ranking, they're trying to get the GMAT really high, and OP's 665 after 6 attempts. Like, it's not bad, but it's not going to offset that GPA. So academically, not ideal. He's got credentials coming out of his ears, but those don't factor into the rankings. So the way schools are looking at this profile is like, okay, this guy is not dumb, but he's not going to be good for our stats. That's going to be, that's what this comes down to. In terms of demographic, Latino 27-year-old male is underrepresented, not dramatically, but definitely a bit. Extracurriculars now for a wealth management person, actually quite strong and substantial extracurriculars. This financial planning program for undergrad, if you can beef that up and really make that look like a thing, that could make a big difference and really make you stand out from finance applicants who, as we just saw in the last roast, often don't have many extracurriculars. So that's a positive. This is not an extracurricular. Okay, to be fair, he put it as accolades, but let's be clear, that's not an extracurricular because that is work done in the role. It's a good thing. It will help, and it should be included on the resume and maybe even touched on in the essays. But extracurriculars, everything is on this one piece. Professional wealth management is not particularly highly represented in the MBA world, but it is a good, solid background. And with those sort of certifications, OP is definitely going to be able to crush the finance classes and maybe even like teach classmates, etc. Good progression, and I'm reading into here that which was a huge promotion. Like, I'm reading that as I got promoted. If I'm reading it correctly, that is a positive as well for OP's profile. Make that clear on the resume. Make those two separate roles on the resume to make that promotion really obvious. Goals. Management consulting is a shit goal for you. I'm going to be absolutely blunt. I hope you haven't written 50 hours of applications assuming that with all of them saying management consulting, because that is really not ideal. Why? Well, for a start, management consultants are going to look at your undergrad and they're going to see that and they're going to think that's an issue. Second, everybody else, well, not everybody else, but like 30, 40, 50% of people are writing, I want to go into management consulting. And they're going up against the management consultants who are going into the MBA, sponsored by management consultancies with a guaranteed job and a full ride. Why would you put yourself in that bucket? Like, it's a terrible idea. And you've got all of these qualifications which position you perfectly for finance roles that other people can't do. Why? It's just an awful goal. So, look, I'm not saying OP is not going to get admitted, but if he does, it's going to be despite this goal, not because of it. And that's not a glowing outcome. Last point on this guy should have got a consultant, because no good consultant would have said, yeah, put MBB, put management consulting as your goal, because it's just a terrible idea. So overall, like, pros and cons.
All right. Okay. So one question OP has had is that, is he reaching for the stars here in terms of those schools, or is this realistic?
I mean, maybe the reality schools, I can see some of those working out. With the right application, really good letters of recommendation, I could see those just about working out. I personally don't see the stretches as coming through. I think the only way that those would be credible is if OP had a very unique goal and storyline leading up to that goal, which I don't see. And so, yeah, I don't want to be too negative, but I think basically those reality schools I can just about see.
Any schools OP should add at this point?
No, I think the school level is roughly right. I had a client with a similar background. And what I mean by that is finance, qualifications, low GPA, who got into UNC Keenan Flagler and really enjoyed it, and then used that to pivot into a bulge bracket investment bank. That was like 2 years ago now. He had a very strong GMAT, maybe a little bit higher than this. But I think Yeah, that's the school that jumps to mind just based on our sort of on our experience, and
Mm.
it fits quite neatly into this group of reality schools here, UNC Keenan Flagler.
All right. And just to make it really clear for OP, in terms of their goals, what kind of finance goals would be quite good for the
Mm.
profile?
Something that leverages the past experience and the qualifications. So
Mm-hmm.
OP's been doing private wealth management, and I would typically the first thing I would explore with this applicant if he was a client was saying, okay, which of these clients did you enjoy working with the most? Right? He's
Mm-hmm.
done some corporate advising for some big clients, Mag 7 companies. Which of these did you enjoy working with the most? And maybe he says, like, NVIDIA, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would then look to pivot the professional career in the direction of that. So, for example, let's say within the Mag Sevens, the ones he enjoyed most were working with the West Coast clients. Let's say because the Mag Seven are heavily focused on the West Coast. I want to pivot my career to financial advisory, serving wealthy individuals on the West Coast,
Mm-hmm.
for example. And
Mm.
so, not so much of a pivot, lots of kind of the same work, enough of a pivot to justify needing an MBA, but not so much that they're going to be like, the school's going to be like, oh,
Mm.
this is
Yeah.
this is not ideal. And so with a narrative like that, that pieces together the best parts of his application, which is the Mag 7 experience, the Series 7, 66, 9, etc., and combine those together, I think that is the way that OP is going to have success. And I'd note that a couple of the schools on the list are West Coast schools, so like maybe that exact narrative could work, particularly for the schools that are on that area. And you could say to USC Marshall, I want to be in California to build up my network here, and yeah, that would make perfect sense.
Okay. Great. I think that's all for OP. Should
Cool.
we do profile three?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Feedback on competitiveness plus the school list. Now,
Mm,
they're applying in fall 2026 and trying to pressure test their school list. Visited Yale and Tuck already, liked both.
cool.
Profile, a 3.2 GPA from a highly selective liberal arts college. A strong upward trend I see there. Finished last 3 semesters at 3.9. Worked throughout college, leadership roles in community-focused orgs. GRE retaking, haven't given the original score.
Mm,
So not very clear on that. Demographics, US citizen, biracial. I see Latina, so this is the female applicant. Grew
mhm,
up low income, raised primarily by my grandparents. Work experience is 6 years in total in early roles, education, nonprofit spaces. Currently at a national organization focused on partnerships, fundraising, and strategy. Uh, Quite a few leadership extras in there, board service with a national organization, a volunteer tutor, and ongoing involvement in equity-focused initiatives. International experience, lived and worked abroad after college through a competitive international fellowship. Goals, short-term impact-oriented strategy, CSR, or social impact consulting. Long-term, a leadership role directing capital and partnerships towards underserved communities.
mm.
Schools I'm considering are Duke, Fuqua, Yale, UVA, Darden, Haas, McDonough, possibly Dartmouth. Tuck, apprehensive about the location. Questions in there, but let's give OP some honest feedback on their profile first.
Cool, let's do it. So 3.2 GPA in terms of academic, 3.2 GPA is not
Mm.
great, but it's not a train wreck either, particularly that it came from a highly selective liberal arts college, so it's not bad at all. GRE is the big unknown, right?
Mhm.
If they're retaking and they haven't given their original score, that implies that it wasn't great. These targets seem sensible. That would be a 320, right? A 165, 155 would be a 320, which would be a nice target to be at, but we don't know. We'll see. Demographic, definitely strength for OP, adds unique perspective to the cohort. African American Latina is URM, definitely female URM, low income, maybe first gen, we don't know, but just provides a very interesting perspective and a diversifier to the cohort for sure. So that helps. And also in terms of age, 6 years of work experience is about right for an MBA program, a little bit on the higher side. The average is about 5. So, but definitely adding value here. Extracurriculars. I love this board service with a national organization. This should be front and center of OP's application. Compare that to the finance applicants we were talking about before, who don't have any, and if they do, it's like hit and miss. This is outstanding, right? OP can write a whole leadership essay about just that. It's amazing. So then, in terms of professionals, yeah, I don't know. And I don't think they either will necessarily know what this means. Where's the work experience here? Currently in a national organization, like
Mm.
that could be pretty much anything. That could be like the NFL, that could be a charity. I don't know what that is. Be absolutely clear with the schools, obviously. If it's an organization that they've heard of and carries a big brand, which I suspect it does, that will act in OP's favor for sure. Obviously, the LORs will also strengthen this. If you can get a letter of recommendation from said well-known organization, that will help. So definitely aim to do that, OP. Goals, yeah, impact strategy makes perfect sense. Here, I think that's a natural evolution from the current role, which is great, and also uses an MBA. So that's a great goal. And then, so overall, one last thing I want to mention actually is it's great that you visited the schools. Schools like this, and we often get the question like, does it really matter if I visit the school? Well, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it does. It's like applying to a company. If you visited the company, if you've got kind of have that insight, you're going to have an advantage. And I would encourage OP to explicitly mention this. For example, in the um, in the career goals essay, I would say, tell the story of why you want to go, why you want to pivot, and then you flip the story into, and that's why I want to go to Yale, for example, or Haas. Particularly when I visited, I enjoyed these. I visited this class, and I think that'll be really useful for my career pivot. Mention these visits explicitly in your application essays because it does put you at an advantage to have visited the schools. And so overall, a strong profile, if well formed, if the application is well formed and the goals are well justified, I think OP is in a solid position. I think broadly those schools are kind of where OP should be targeting.
Okay, so that I think that's OP's first question. How competitive are they for, those top programs that they mentioned?
Yeah, look, in terms of stats, like hard stats, not particularly, but in terms of the extracurricular and the demographics, very competitive. So
Mm-hmm.
the way I would play this strategically is apply to a load of schools, like 6, 7, 8 applications, and in any given year, one of the schools will really like this background. Maybe they don't have enough minorities in the cohort at the moment, and just because the way things have worked out, they really want another person with an African American perspective, for example, and you're in luck, boom, and you got the admit. I would say play the numbers game, and I think it looks like OP is right. There's a list of like I don't know 10, 6, 7 schools there. Um, that is the right way to do it. I think OP is looking at the right kind of programs and the right number of programs. And if you visited Tuck OP, throw the application in there because I think you could get over the location issue if they gave you an offer with a nice scholarship.
Okay. And do you think HBS and GSB are worth applying to as reaches?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. I don't think I'm not seeing anything particularly unique which is required for those two schools, right? You can get away, you can get into a Harvard, into a Stanford with a 3.2 GPA just about, and like as a with these minority kind of credential stats, you could, but the people that get into those schools, regardless of grades, have something really unique on their profile, and I'm not seeing it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe OP just hasn't mentioned it, but what are the chances of that? Like, what's the point in submitting a profile review if you're not going to improve your best, include your best features?
Yeah.
I think OP probably hasn't got that spark, that sort of spice that is going to get them into Harvard, Stanford. I think it's probably a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And on the school topic again, are there any schools they should add or remove?
Um, Not especially. I think the key point I would make on schools is get the number up, like really apply to a bunch of schools. You could also consider applying via the consortium. For those who are watching who don't know the consortium, it's a program targeted at minorities, think African American, Latina type groups and it streamlines applications to schools via this portal. In other words, you fill out the portal once and you kind of have, I mean, you have extra access to extra events, that kind of stuff. And historically, people who have applied via the consortium often have quite outsized results. So no comment in terms of schools. OP is targeting the right ones, but in terms of applying via the consortium, that would be my key advice there.
Okay. And what do you think OP can do to improve her profile? She's applying in fall 2026, so that's a year. What do you think she can do in that time?
Yeah. Well, let's be specific. We're 19th of deck. That's about 9 months. So you've got 9 months to strengthen. Well, the first thing is the GRE, right? Retaking. And we don't know how many times they've taken it, but like basically keep going until you get a good score because that GPA is not doing you any favors. So you're going to need that GRE to be, you want it to be at 320 would be really nice, at least 320, really. And I only say that because of the background. If you're an Indian applicant, for example, 320 is not going to cut it. But in this case, just about get away with it. I would say that the other thing you can do in the next 9 months is possibly get a promotion at work, or at least take on a new project, something tangible and strong that you can put into your essays, your resume to stand out. And then I think kind of linked to that, you're going to need recommendations. Start schmoozing your bosses. Start eyeballing who are you going to be your recommenders. Start schmoozing them. Maybe take them out to lunch. Start talking to them about your career prospects, your career goals, that kind of thing, and start building that relationship because you're going to need to get a good letter of recommendation from them. And then in terms of extracurriculars, keep going with what you're doing, right? This board service, can you get something through the door? Can you get some new initiative going? That would be really, really nice. Those are kinds of the things you can do in 9 months. You've got quite a bit of timeline. Obviously, leave 2 or 3 months at the end to write 7 or 8 applications, but that still leaves 6 or 7 months to do all of this work.
Okay. Okay, OP, I hope we've answered all of your questions, and that concludes our profiles for today. Felt a bit short this time, didn't it?
It's all right. We've got one more bonus, right?
We do have a bonus. Now, this is someone who's been admitted to Harvard. Congratulations, OP. Should I still apply Stanford GSB round 2, given the Harvard withdrawal clause? Hi all, I've been admitted to Harvard MBA, but my goals lean more tech than consulting or traditional finance. So the complication is HBS has a clause to withdraw applications or decline invites to other MBA programs. I haven't applied to Stanford yet, and I'm debating whether it's worth applying in round 2. Questions: if I'm still deciding, is it reasonable to apply to GSB round 2 before I finalize anything with HBS? For someone aiming at tech, is GSB materially better enough to justify another application, given the time crunch, especially now with round 2? And what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, okay. So we deal with clients in this position. We have clients in this position, pretty much every year. In this case, I think it's a no-brainer. At this stage, we're 19th of December. Stanford is an absolutely massive application, right? You've got your what matters most, you've got your why Stanford, and you've got 3 optional essays that are not really optional, plus the background essay and the other optional 5 more. You're at like 8 essays for Stanford. It's a huge app. Now, sure, with your Harvard application, you've probably got some of the material, but it's like Christmas is ruined. Like it's gonna be a lot of work for that Stanford app. In terms of the clause and all of this stuff, and basically what OP is getting at here is that the application specifically says, the portal specifically says, we request that you decline other applications and etc. And when you kind of pay your deposit and sign up, there's a clause binding you to that. And OP is wary of this because the deadline is coming up. And so if he applies to Stanford, he will be jeopardizing, breaking that clause basically. And so I think the other question then is, for someone aiming at tech, is GSB materially better to justify? Um, it's a little bit better for the tech focused applicants we've worked with. They tend to lean towards Stanford, and I think the outcomes are perhaps slightly better, particularly given the location, etc. But does it justify the application? No. Should OP apply to Stanford at this point and risk their Harvard offer? No. The stupidest thing you could do right now, I would just grab the HBS offer, bite their hand off, get on with your life, enjoy Christmas.
Mhm. I love the top comment if you want to scroll down.
By all means, please do drop the three birds in hand for the three birds in the bush. Fair play.
And I think, yeah, that's the consensus across comments is that take HPS.
Seriously, there's just no guarantee at all that you'll get a GSB offer. None whatsoever. You've got a slightly higher chance than other people because of the Harvard offer. Sure, your profile does look like it's going to be strong, but like it's still what, way sub 50% chance. You're going to jeopardize a Harvard offer for that? Don't be stupid. No, I think that comment is pretty much nails it for me.
Mhm. Okay.
Good
That's
stuff.
all of our posts for today, Sam.
Fantastic, Mal. Thank you very much for gathering all of these posts and for all of your hard work over the last few weeks. We have been editing client essays continuously for the last couple of months. Mal and I are both in desperate need of a break, which we're not going to have until January, I hope. And but yeah, thanks so much for all your help. And if you've enjoyed today's roast and you'd like your profile to get roasted, feel free to send it to us via Reddit. Also, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. We do these roasts every week in, week out, even in busy periods like now. And yeah, Sandweeks Consulting is the consultancy firm. Feel free to check out the website, sandweeks.com. Right, Mal, see you
See you
soon.
next week. Yeah.
See ya.